your food dollars can do a lot more than just heal you and feed you. If you're going to shop at your local farmers market, weather's getting good, going to the farmers market's an awesome way to support local farmers. Ask the farmers how they grow their food, because organic is very expensive to get the certification, but there's lots of farmers out there doing the right thing and, doing low intervention growing of their plants. When you buy local and seasonal, you're getting more nutrients for your consumer dollar.
You're listening to the Live Life Longer show with Dan Voss, inspiring you to live longer through the cold, the hot, breathing, eating, and being nature. In this week's episode, my guest is Kristen Coffield, the founder of the Culinary Cure and is the pioneer of culinary resilience, the shockingly simple concept that food can help us live younger, longer, and better. Kristen is an author, educator, and culinary disruptor, shaking up our bad habits around food to help us live healthier, happier lives. She believes plant-based diets hold the key to enhanced wellness and disease prevention, and that creating intentional culinary habits is a superpower for productive, purpose-driven humans. Kristen is a regular contributor on Good Morning Washington, ABC7, and Fox 5, where she inspires and motivates viewers to take charge of their health. Kristen's articles, videos, and recipes are available at theculinarycure.com. Kristen, welcome to the Live Life Longer show.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here because I think we share a lot of the same passions for helping people kind of crack the code on their habits to live better.
Yes. Yeah, I agree. I enjoyed our brief conversation before we hit record today, and I think a lot of what we believe lines up nicely. And that concept of taking back control of our health. And a lot of the people I talk to, and I know a lot of my listeners, they feel like they maybe have lost that control, or they have lost the answers or a direction. And hopefully that's what we can give some folks today, is a little bit of direction and guidance on how we can regain that control of our health.
Yeah, I love that. And, for most people, the hardest part is kind of unwinding all the information. There's a lot of wellness overwhelm going on. And certainly, given, the past year, it's made people really appreciate their good health all that much more. And getting started on improving your wellness, there's never a good time. Like, there's never a bad time. There's never a good time. Like, just do it, people. Like, don't wait. You don't put it off. We can align our habits, the little things we do every day. So 43% of what we do every single day is mindless repetition. And much of that is eating and drinking. So we're not thinking about it, we're just doing it. So when we start to think about it, and we decide to harness the power of that to align it with our big picture goals, we can flip the switch pretty quickly.
Yeah. So it sounds like what you're saying is that we have our subconscious and our conscious, and often what we do is subconscious around eating, right? It's those habits. And correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like you're saying we need to get back into being a little bit more conscious and aware. Is that correct? Of what
Absolutely.
we eat?
I love to say mindless eating is the enemy of mindful health. So when we think about food, let's go back to high school here. So when we think about food in its most basic form is calories. And what we know is that not all calories are created equal, because the calories in an apple are different than the calories in a bagel. And the calories in an apple come attached with micronutrients and fiber and all these good things. And the body knows exactly what to do with those things. The calories in a bagel, refined carbs, turn into sugar in the blood, spike our blood sugar, create low-level inflammation. So now we know that food is calories, and calories in their most basic form are energy. So calories are energy, so food is fuel. So when we start to think of this and we're like, oh my gosh, I'm not thinking about that when I'm eating. I'm just thinking, oh, I like this. It tastes good. I'm so hungry. I need to feed myself. But when we start to think, this is fuel. What do I want this to do for me? How do I want to look? How do I want to feel? How do I want to sleep? How, do I want to dial down stress? Should I really have that, double caramel macchiato at 3 p.m? Is that going to affect my sleep? Is that going to, jack my sugar up? And is that going to serve me? So when we think of food, like, hey, what do I want from this? I want a body I love that loves me back.
Yeah, 100%. I know based on what I've read about you, you are a big believer in food is medicine. What do we need to know about that? And once you start thinking of food in that way, can you start like eliminating, like you said, some of those foods that we just mindlessly eat? And then once we become more mindful and realize that, the food that I'm putting into my body is actual medicine, does it become a little bit easier to start eating healthier?
I like to think it's like, oh, the big reveal, there's not a whole lot of neutral food out there. It's either helping you or hurting you. So if you want it to help you, you definitely want to be thinking of it as this can nourish me. So I talk about resilient wellness. That's creating this almost automatic wellness. So we're aligning our eating habits with our shopping habits. We're aligning our consumer dollars with our values. So we're trying to support regenerative agriculture and companies that are doing the right thing for their people and the planet. And we're trying to get the most value for our dollar. Because what we're actually buying when we buy food is we are buying nutrition. We're buying nutrients. That's what we're paying for. So just because something's cheap doesn't mean it's a good value.
Yeah.
So I like to tell people, buy less food, buy better food, and have a plan for all the food you eat. Who hasn't thrown out a bag of spring mix at the end of the week, right?
Yep.
We're all like, oh, it's funky looking, it's sticking to the sides. And shopping local, your food dollars can do a lot more than just heal you and feed you. If you're going to shop at your local farmer's market, weather's getting good, go into the farmer's market's an awesome way to support local farmers. Ask the farmers how they grow their food, because organic is very expensive to get the certification, but there's lots of farmers out there doing the right thing and, doing low intervention growing of their plants. When you buy local and seasonal, you're getting more nutrients for your consumer dollar.
Yeah.
Those plants didn't have to get packed and travel too far and get stored somewhere. So you're getting more nutrition. So people say, it's expensive to shop at the farmer's market, but you're getting more. You're getting more than maybe that bag of apples that's, been floating around for 6 months and now they're coming to you. So the nutrients in our food don't last. So we want to get them fresh and live when they can get into our body. Our body knows what to do with real food. It breaks it down, sends it to where it's supposed to go. It turns into fuel. It builds that culinary resilience. It supports the good bacteria in our gut, which is the home of our immune response. And it just becomes this is so simple. Now I'm eating to fuel myself and create this resilient wellness. And, I'm 62. And I woke up this morning to an email saying somebody that I grew up with, who was a year younger than me, died. And he died because he lived hard. He didn't take care of his body. He didn't use food as medicine. So he basically, in some ways, contributed to his own demise through his not using that 43% of mindless repetition to his advantage.
Wow, it's unfortunate. And, I hear people say that food is expensive or healthy food is expensive, and I'm going to go off and buy fast food, or I'm going to get junk food at the store because it's cheaper. And my first thought is, okay, maybe you're saving a few bucks up front, But then what are you doing to your health? What are you doing to your body? And if you end up getting certain chronic diseases or obesity, and now you're on all these medications and you're having surgeries later in life, and you're having all these healthcare costs, you're going to pay a lot more on the back end than you would have if you spent a few more bucks on the front end of healthy, good, clean food. And I still even with that story, I don't even know if healthy food is as that much more expensive than junk food or unhealthy food. I've done all kinds of cost comparisons and added up the math. And for me, when I cook my own food, I am spending about $7 or $8 a meal. And if you go to any kind of fast food chain, you're going to spend at least $8, $9, $10 a meal. That's just how it is now. It's not cheap anymore. So I don't think that myth is really accurate anymore.
I would agree. And I would say you have to think about what you're getting for your dollars. Mm-hmm. Because just because it's cheap doesn't mean you're getting the nutrition from it. Yep. So you're filling yourself up, but you're going to pay one way or another. You're either going to, pay a little more, just like you suggested, up front, so that you avoid those catastrophic medical costs down the road. And I'm always saying to people, we've got to get away from processed foods. I tell people to be label readers, but really we should be eating more food without labels and learning delicious ways to prepare them. And I invite people to come to theculinarycure.com. I have 200 recipes on my website that are very simple but delicious. So you should know this about me. My background is culinary. So I had a catering company for 2 decades. Mm-hmm. I am one of those people. My family goes on vacation and we're drinking coffee and we're talking about what we're going to eat for lunch. And at lunch, we're talking about what we're going to eat for dinner. Mm-hmm. So we love to eat. We love food. Everybody in my family loves to cook. Yeah. And, when we can make healthy, delicious, and easy, it just changes everything. When we get chemicals out of our food, so just because there are chemicals in many processed foods, many fast foods, doesn't make those chemicals food.
Right.
So when we put chemicals in our body, the body it's not made to process them, because it's not the fuel this engine was designed to run on. Mm-hmm. So those chemicals have to get stored somewhere, because the body doesn't know what it's supposed to do. So it creates this low-level inflammation, this IgG inflammation. And so when we start walking around with this low-level inflammation that we might not even know we have, right? Because it's low-level, like it's not like having a horrible hangover. You did something wrong there. But if you're eating in a way that creates this low-level inflammation, it creeps up. It happens over time. Feeling crappy becomes our new normal. And many of those foods that have chemicals in them, added sugar, added sodium, bad fats, are actually engineered to be highly addictive. So we crave them. So now we're walking around with this low-level inflammation that's linked to every lifestyle disease you never want to have.
Yeah. So you just mentioned some of what I think I want to get to in terms of what's causing that low-level inflammation. We have sugar. What else did you just mention there that's causing some of that?
So sugar, sodium, dairy, gluten. Eggs are highly inflammatory, but a lot of that has to do with how most of the eggs people eat are farmed. Soy is bad if you're not getting organic soy. Peanuts, peanuts are a legume. They're not actually a tree nut, and they're linked to inflammation and artificial sweeteners, artificial ingredients. No, don't eat them. No.
Do you have a list of some anti-inflammatory foods that we can be consuming a little bit more of?
Yeah, absolutely. And we talked about this a little bit before. So there's not as much money to be made selling people fruits and vegetables as there is selling people processed foods or cheaply raised industrial farmed foods. So the way that we can eat that is the least inflammatory is by avoiding those foods that we just talked about, and going to eating like those dark leafy green vegetables are so good for us. Eating all these fruits and vegetables, nuts, tree nuts, legumes, seeds, things like that, they all have fiber attached to them, and these micronutrients and phytonutrients, and these are the things that our body responds to. So when we eat them, we look better, we feel better, and we dial down that inflammation. So just by moving to a more whole food, plant-based diet, we automatically lower that inflammation. But one of the easiest things people can do, and I always say hydration is the low-hanging fruit of wellness. When we can get the hydration part right, it's easier for people to get the food part right. So I start each day with a 10-ounce glass of warm or room temperature lemon water. And I use a straw, so I'm protecting my tooth enamel from the the acid of the lemon. But although the lemon goes in acidic, it turns alkaline in the body, and it raises that alkalinity level in our body. So that's beneficial. And then, we don't have to give everything up. We can make these like swaps, these little swaps to help us move more in the right direction, because I think people feel overwhelmed. Like they hear us talking and they're like, oh my God, where do I begin? I love my Diet Mountain Dew. Do I really have to give that up? And so I say, well, let's start by adding some good things in. So let's start by adding that lemon water, and by drinking more water throughout the day and eating more water. So eating more fruits and vegetables. I love to make my own salad dressing. It's so easy. Every time I serve it, people are like, oh my God, what is this magic? It is lemon juice, about a third lemon juice, 2/3 olive oil, Himalayan pink sea salt, freshly cracked black pepper, and chopped shallot. That's it.
Simple.
So
simple.
Now we're getting that good, and I use good quality olive oil, and I squeeze the lemons fresh. I go through a jar of that a week. And every time I bring it somewhere, it's gone. Like, I don't know where it went. So the hostess stole it,
Yeah, I love that. It's such a simple recipe, but it is packed with all kinds of great nutrients. What is it that we want to avoid when we get store-bought dressings? Is it just high in sugar? What's the reason there to avoid store-bought dressing?
And some are better than others. It's more expensive. So if you really want to save money and make your food like amazingly delicious, you make your own salad dressing once a week, because you're going to want to eat more salads because it tastes better. Yeah. And people love to buy that bagged lettuce, but I say, well, why not make your own? Get a good spinner, put some, as much as I try to avoid plastic, Ziploc bags still work the best for this, but I reuse my Ziploc bags. Pack some Ziploc bags with salad, kind of squeeze the air out. My salad lasts for like 10 days. So we have salad every night. Store-bought dressings, again, they can have added sugar. It's almost impossible to find one without added sugar. They have high amounts of sodium. We've got to be careful of the types of fats that are used to make them. So, you can make your life simple. It sounds more complicated. I promise people, if you spend 2 to 3 hours once a week prepping your food, prepping your breakfast, your snacks, visit me at the Culinary Cure. 200 recipes for all those things. Make a plan. Buy meals. Don't just shop for random food. Have a plan. Don't have extra stuff in your house. At the end of the week, your fridge should be empty. And then you do that 2 to 3 hours of prep. I promise you, you get back that time that you spent prepping and more during the week when you really need it, when you're too busy to be thinking. You will spend less total time worrying about what you're going to eat and actually prepping it and shopping for it. It's like magic when people do this. They're like, oh my God, this is like so liberating. I made your sheet pan chicken shawarma, and we had that for dinner, and then I used it on a salad, and then we made, roll-ups with it.
It's a game changer, yeah. And all it takes is a few hours on a Sunday, and now you've freed that time up for the whole week. And I love that hack about making your own salad dressing and having that in the fridge for the week. And then you're just, automatically going to want to eat more greens and salads because you see that in your fridge, and now you're kind of like, oh, I have this dressing. I am now going to, go get some more salads. It's a great hack.
It's addictively delicious, I will tell you. I mean, it's so yummy. We put it on like oven roasted vegetables. We put it on fish. And it is so simple. And, so if that's like a great takeaway for people, that you can just try it. I promise you, and then if you make your own salad, and it's not hard to make your own salad. You can literally buy a bag of, those romaine hearts. You could go to Trader Joe's. You can buy a bag of arugula, a bag of romaine hearts, and then you can get some endive, get some celery. I make a salad every night, and it never takes me more than 5 minutes. I pull off those outer leaves, rinse the romaine, chop up that endive, mix in some of that baby arugula, and throw some celery in there, and it's yum.
Perfect. I love it. And it's kind of hacking that myth, or busting that myth that cooking has to be difficult. It has to take a bunch of time. It has to be stressful. It doesn't. It can be simple. It can be fun, and you can have really delicious, healthy foods.
Exactly.
That's great. I perhaps should have started actually before. I want to get to your story of how you got started in this space of health. But before we get there, you and I were talking before the recording, and you mentioned an app for shopping to find out where meats are grown and how they're grown, or just food in general. What app was that you shared with me?
So any food that has a barcode, any product really that has a barcode, it's called Buycott, BUYCOTT. And you can scan the barcode in, and you can find out more about the parent company. And this is important because many of us don't realize that so many of the food companies, bottled water companies, are owned by these big conglomerates that also own pharmaceutical companies. So there's a lot of money to be made feeding people food that makes them sick and needing of maintenance. Lifestyle medications, that's a medication you take every day for the rest of your life. So we need to be our own best advocates.
That's mind-blowing, that what you just said about some of the big pharma companies owning these big food companies. That's scary. I'll leave it at that. I do want to hear a little bit more, and again, I perhaps should have started the conversation with your story. I just want to get a little bit more insight on how you got started in this space.
So I actually got started in the food space in high school. So I've been in food for a very long time, and food has always been my medium. So, I was the girl who catered part of her own wedding. That was a bad idea. And, I'm the person who always brought, meals to friends. And I was the mom who was feeding her kids apples without alar 32 years ago. And all my friends will say, Kristen, you've been talking about probiotics for 30 years. So I always had an interest in the link between food and wellness. And I thought I was doing pretty good. And then when I got into my mid-50s, I had some real sort of a tsunami of unfortunate personal events. And it didn't happen overnight. It happened over like a decade. But my mom's estrogen positive breast cancer came back. My dad was diagnosed with Alzheimer's. And, both of these are diseases that are linked to inflammation. I was having some trouble. My husband and I were struggling financially. We had some real big issues there, which was affecting our relationship. Our last kid went off to college, which is a very interesting time because all of a sudden you don't have kids at home, so you can kind of reevaluate some things. And then I was diagnosed with thyroid cancer, and then my dog died, and it was just like that was it. That was like, it was a lot of things that happened over time, and my big world, my big president of the PTA, pillar of the community, woman with a catering company, asked Kristen, she's the girl, she knows everything. My big world got smaller and smaller and smaller, and it got to the point where I was struggling to get out of bed every day. And when I would wake up, my first thought was, how am I going to get through this day? I don't know if I can do this. And then when I'd get into bed at night, and I'd be exhausted, and then I couldn't sleep. So I had basically, and I know other people who've done this, I had basically rewired my brain through all the stress in my life. And I was, my thyroid, I'm sure I had thyroid cancer because the cortisol was shooting through my thyroid like heroin for about a decade, and I was living in fight or flight.
Wow.
So food had always been my medium, and I always thought I was eating pretty well, but every single person I've ever coached says to me, oh yeah, we eat really well. But the truth of the matter is, I had a lot of habits that weren't serving me. I was drinking too much caffeine. I was putting down easy half a bottle of wine at night. I was eating a lot of refined carbs, which were all fueling my stress. So all of those things, stress is a form of inflammation. All of those things were fueling the inflammation that I was already experiencing and making it worse. And one day I woke up and, the rope was long, and I got to the end of the rope, and there was like, oh my God, there's no more rope. And it's one of those thrive or die moments where you just kind of go, this cannot be what the universe intended for me. I can't believe that this is what my life is. Shitty cannot be my new normal, right?
Right.
And so I couldn't change all those things that were happening, but I could control what was on the end of my fork. And in that moment, I just flipped the switch, and I was like, I'm not putting anything in my mouth that doesn't help me feel better. So I got rid of all those refined carbs. I took the wine out, limited myself to one caffeinated beverage a day, started drinking more water, eating more vegetables, and I started to have more energy, and I started to actually sleep better. And then I was sleeping better, but I was still waking up at 3 a.m, and my brain was like a filing cabinet, and stuff was just shooting out. And I thought, you know what? I can lie here and ruminate, or I can get up and go to the gym. So I started going to the gym. And all of a sudden, my body is changing. So now I look better, I feel better, my energy is different. I'm creating all these good hormones, all these endorphins are kind of flowing through, and I'm starting to feel like I can handle stuff again. So I basically took my life back at that point, and a great job came out of the universe, and I started the Culinary Cure because I knew I was hardly the first person who had to pull themselves up by their bootstraps and rebuild what looked like was going to be a great life, but it just didn't turn out that way. It was bad, but it's good now. And I took it back and I rebuilt it. And that was like 7 years ago. So I built the Culinary Cure so other people could find resources to help them live their best life too.
Hey guys, I want to take a quick second to tell you about Blossom Wellness, a mental health hygiene company that gives people the tools they need to better manage feelings of stress, anxiety, and mental burnout. Their signature product, Bliss Blend, is formulated with lion's mane, reishi mushroom, and full spectrum CBD oil to aid in reducing feelings of stress and anxiety, boosting immunity, and supporting brain health. This is my personal favorite CBD product as it provides a nice blend of calmness along with focus and mental clarity throughout the day. To try Blossom, go to blossomwellness.co and use the code DANVOSS, that's DANVOSS at checkout for 10% off all orders. I love that story. It goes to show how important it is to get that foundational piece of your health in order. If you have that down first, you're allowing yourself and your life to open up to so many other opportunities and possibilities. And I've been there myself. I mean, 2020, we've all have faced challenges one way or the other. I had a pretty rough 2020 and for several different reasons, business reasons, relationships, all kinds of stuff. I mean, my health in general wasn't even that great pre-COVID and at the beginning of 2020. And then by taking control of that one aspect of my life, saying, I'm going to fix certain things one step at a time, like we were talking about. It doesn't have to be all overnight. But by making small changes to my health, starting with mental health and nutrition and sleep and getting more movement in throughout the day and hydrating, all of a sudden you just feel better. You have more energy. And honestly, it almost feels like a superpower that we've had all along that's within us. And we lose sight of that over time for various reasons because of all the things that happen to us in life. But when you can find that superpower again, man, does life change. And I've experienced it. I know you've experienced it. And if anyone that's listening that wants to experience that too, start with those small changes, starting with nutrition, starting with sleep and all the other things we're talking about. So thank you for sharing that.
There's a quote I really love. It's by Arthur Ashe. And it goes like this: start where you are, use what you have, do what you can. And I love that, because it is overwhelming. So just do one thing, whether it's hydrating more or, getting rid of artificial sweeteners, watching the added sugars in your food. But these baby steps, this is what people don't realize. This is where the magic is. It's when we align our habits with our big picture goals and we put it on autopilot. So just by preparing your food for the week, and I always say, feeding yourself is a 21st century survival skill. Like, we've got to get this right. Yep. Because there are so many things we can't control. And there are chemicals in our environment that were not there before. We can't control some of those things, but we can control what's on the end of our fork. So just start there. And start eating more plants, start drinking more water, exercise more. Exercise actually makes us younger at a cellular level. Like, it makes us younger. Hello, that's incredible. I get up every morning at 4:10, Monday through Friday. I get up at 4:10. I do a 5 a.m. workout or a 6 a.m. workout. I am easily the oldest person in my exercise classes. And I feel like I look and feel so much better than I did a decade ago. I have more energy. I'm sleeping better. I'm handling stress. I'm more positive because what we focus on expands. So when I was in that bad place, I was focusing on a lot of negative things. And so I was bringing more of that into my orbit.
Yep. Yeah, I'm not trying to, toot your own horn here, but when you said you were 60, you said 62, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting that. You look much younger than that, and it obviously is a tribute to your lifestyle and the foods that you're eating and your exercise and good sleep and all the other things that you do. So good for you.
My daughters joke. They go, "Yeah, Mom, you look good." They go, "But from behind, you look great." 20 from behind.
There you go. I love that. That's very
But
sweet of them.
I'll tell you an interesting little short story. My husband goes on a golf tournament every year with a bunch of white collar criminal defense attorneys, and my husband does not play golf. So he goes down and he cooks these amazing meals for these guys. So they have bouillabaisse the first
Nice.
night. They do, ribs and fried chicken the second night, and then he does paella the third night. And he brings
Nice.
these he orders wine from me. I sell this natural wine, and he orders wine and he brings the wine down. And when he came back this time, he said, "I have to tell you, these guys look old." And he goes, "And I'm the oldest guy in the group." And he goes, "They look
Wow.
older, they act older." And at one point we were sitting around and everybody was talking about some ailment. And so, it was, and he just sort of takes for granted the way we live, that we have
Yep.
this. Oh, and I love this. Anybody can do this too. We keep a 5-2 plan. 5 days a week, we eat a largely plant-based diet. We don't drink alcohol unless there's a reason, like a special occasion.
Yep.
And we use our food with great intention and precision so that, we can live younger, longer, better and better, but so we can have all the energy to do all the things that are important to us. And we know
Yes.
that we're investing right now in what the next decade looks like. So everything people are doing now is setting you up for that next decade. And there comes this point where you start to see this big difference between the people who have good habits and the people who haven't been mindful of their health. So it's Friday night. My husband's making a pizza. We're going to have some red wine. We're really looking forward to that. But
Nice.
we also feel like this is always putting the wellness odds in our favor.
Yeah, I love that 5-2 concept. You can do 5 days of plant-based, and then the other two, are you a little bit more loose on maybe some meats then?
Yeah, and so we do eat meat, and there are plenty of animal protein recipes at the Culinary Cure, but we don't eat a lot of meat. So we eat
Yeah.
higher quality meat, and we eat a fair amount of protein, but we're really strategic between plant protein and animal protein. So on the weekend, we're just a little more relaxed, and because come on,
Yeah.
life should be fun. It's not just
Sure.
this shouldn't be so hard that people can't do it. The whole idea is you make this work for you, and you just keep trying to do these little improvements as you go.
Yes.
And when you feel great because you're doing certain things, you want to do more of that. When you look great because you're doing certain things, you're like, "Oh yeah, we could do more of that."
Yeah, I love that concept. I get some people, they are plant-based or vegan strictly for certain reasons, or people that love meat and they have meat in most of their meals. But I like that nice blend of, hey, if you can do 4 or 5 days out of the week that's plant-based and get all of your veggies in, get all of your nutrients in, you can have a few days out of the week to have fun and enjoy some, foods that you enjoy. And you can also still have meats that are healthy, that are clean and ethically raised and sourced. So
Exactly. And we are omnivores. So we are designed to eat both plants and animals. And the problem really comes when you look at what's changed with farming and how that's actually changed our food. And the nutritional value of our food and what's in our food. So because of all this cheap animal protein, we've become carnivores that eat carbohydrates. And that's where you get into this really kind of dangerous equation of creating inflammation in the body. And we need to eat more plants. We really should be, when we can afford it and find it, we should be buying organic or, low pesticide, herbicide, fungicide produce, because the way and I don't want to blow anybody's mind here, but there's a lot of discussion that we've got less than 60 harvests left on this planet because of the way we're farming and stripping our topsoil. So we need to be supporting these small, organic, biodynamic, low intervention, regenerative farming practices. This isn't just about buying cheap food. This is about having a place we can all live and be healthy. There are a lot of diseases that are showing up because of chemicals in our environment. So we need to be aware of that. That's part of the price. Knowing where our food comes from. This is we could do a whole nother hour on, where our food comes from, the people harvesting our food and what's happening to them and their exposure, to all these farming chemicals and all that crap ends up in our water. That all ends up in our water. There's nowhere on earth where glyphosates aren't showing up in the water. Be scared about that.
Yeah, that is scary stuff. Yeah, I've heard that statistic before about we have about 60 harvests left if we continue the way we're going. And yeah, I've had conversations around regenerative farming, and that to me is the way to go. That's the answer if we're gonna do this long term, and we're gonna be around, and we're gonna still have food and healthy food and feed the masses. We have to start looking at more sustainable measures like regenerative farming.
Absolutely. And that's why when we align our consumer dollars with our values, when we support these farmers, we're getting so much more. So you're not really spending more, because when you factor in the waste, so every time you throw out that bag of moldy spring mix, it's ending up in a landfill, outgassing, methane into the atmosphere, heating up the planet. So every action has a reaction, and we can live more simply. And it's really kind of like we can game the system if we want to, right? We can buy better food. We can support, the things that are important to us. We can get more nutrients for our consumer dollars and waste less. It's like, why wouldn't we?
Exactly. So true. If you start thinking about the reason why, so you asked why wouldn't we? I think if people start asking why do this, what's the purpose, you start realizing that there's some real benefit to it for our health, for the health of our planet, the sustainability factor. Then it's like, oh yeah, that makes sense. And then you say, well, why wouldn't I do it then? Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I was just gonna get into the book, which has been out now since January of this year, correct? Your new book, How Healthy People Eat. Yeah. What are some of the key takeaways that you'd like to discuss about the new book?
Well, I wrote the book because I kept finding myself having the same conversations with people over and over again. So my book, How Healthy People Eat, An Eater's Guide to Healthy Habits, is for any human that has a mouth. So any eater can benefit from this book. And it's not a diet. It doesn't have recipes. But what it does do is it tells you how to eat. Like, how should we be eating? So if you're going to sit down and eat a meal, like, there are certain basic functions that a lot of people have forgotten. So chew your food, slow down, don't wash your meals down with liquids. There's some basic tenets to eating that have gotten lost because so many of us are eating in front of our computers, we're eating in our cars. Children aren't being raised where they're sitting around a table, learning about eating. A lot of traditional meals aren't even being prepared in the home anymore. So learning how to functionally eat is the first section, because healthy people have got healthy habits. So we all want those healthy habits. The second section of my book is kind of like what we should be eating, and it lists some foods. Like, it's food is medicine. So it lists some interesting foods that are inexpensive that we can all start swapping into our diet for some wellness benefits. And it's really pretty. It's, each chapter's a different color.
Colorful. Yeah.
And I like to say it's perfect. You can put it on the back of your toilet seat, and it's like the perfect reading for somebody. And then the third chapter is how to build a culinary pharmacy. So that's
Okay.
using herbs and spices. Herbs and spices are the original medicines. And, willow bark is where aspirin came from. And codeine came from, poppies. So by using more herbs and spices, we can actually make our food more nutritious and we can get more medicinal benefits from what we're eating.
Yes. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, that sounds fantastic. You mentioned that it's a good toilet seat book. Talk about things going full circle.
Right. Well, the funny thing was, I gave my friends copies of my book, and one of my friends put it on the back of her toilet, and she said, and George came out of the bathroom, and he said, "Hey, did you know, that lentils, have a lot of zinc in them, and they're good for this, this, and this?" And Marianne goes, "And did you know that's Kristen's book?" And he was like, "What?" So it was just a
Nice.
funny aside. But, I've given this book to friends who have kids, and because it's so feeding the eye, it's so visually appealing, kids pick it up and read it. And I just wanted to make it easy, really just easy for people who wanted to do better, to have like a little mini Bible that they could use. And no matter how many times you read it, you get something of value. And it's like 100 pages with 375 footnotes.
Nice. I love that. How about the first section around how to eat? Because I think that's a huge thing that we've lost sight of, right? Like you said, we eat fast. Some people barely even chew. Just the idea around the dinner table, most families aren't even eating together at the dinner table like our parents and grandparents did. What are some things that we should know about in terms of how to eat and how to eat properly and why that's important for our health?
Well, I'd love to give a little tip here for anybody who wants to get ready for bikini beach weather. Half an hour before you're going to sit down to a meal, have an 8 to 10 ounce glass of water and put a teaspoon of ground raw flaxseed in it. So flaxseed is just such a good, organic flaxseed is such a great thing that most people can benefit from. So it's going to add some fiber. So fiber and fat both keep us fuller longer. So it's got healthy omegas, it's got fiber, it's got natural phytoestrogens in it. And by drinking that in a glass of water a half an hour before you sit down for a meal, you're going to eat less, you're going to eat slower, and you're going to stop eating before you're over full. So to talk about actual eating, so digestion begins with the process of chewing. So breaking down our food properly is important for the absorption of those nutrients. So chewing your food, most people swallow their food before it's just mush in their mouth. Food it is 15 to 20 bites, if not more. I mean, for most people, just getting to 15 is a challenge. So I'd say start by chewing your food. Well, that's going to do two things. You're going to get more nutrients out of that food because you're going to be breaking it down properly, but you're also going to slow down. You can't eat too fast when you're chewing your food properly. So chew your food. Don't wash your food down with liquids. So we're not going to drink liquids with meals. We're going to drink liquids before meals because that's going to help us not overeat, but it's also going to keep us from washing down food that's not properly broken down. And when we swallow food that's not properly broken down, our stomach's got to create more acid to break that food down, which can lead to acid reflux, GERDs, Barrett's esophagus, and all kinds of things. So slow down, chew your food, don't drink liquids with meals, and stop when you're 80% full. Because you're really you're really about 100% full, you just don't know it yet because your body hasn't caught up. And then another thing I always say to people is, please don't eat when you should be sleeping.
And what do you mean by that?
Well, people do a couple of naughty things. They stay up past their sleep time. So
I was gonna say their
we get a
bedtime.
second wind, right? Have you ever done that? Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah. You get a second wind and you're like working on your computer or you're on your phone, and then you should have gone to bed at 9 o'clock, but now it's 11 o'clock and you're kind of hungry. So you go into the kitchen and you like get a snack. Well, now you're eating when you should be sleeping. So between 10 and 2, all your major organs go through their circadian rhythm, and they're supposed to be detoxing and doing their little reboot. And if you're eating when that's supposed to be happening, how's your body supposed to do what it's designed to do? Now you're asking your body to digest when it's supposed to
Yeah.
be detoxing. So
Yeah.
don't eat when you should be sleeping. Have a
Yeah.
cutoff time for all food.
Yeah, I practice intermittent fasting most days. I cut off at 7:30, 8 p.m. I don't eat after that. And my bedtime, about around 10 or so, 10:30 is when I go to sleep. Um, and then I don't eat, in the morning. I don't have my first meal until around 11 a.m. or maybe noon is when I first eat. So I like to keep about an 8-hour eating window there.
And that's doable for most people. And I coach a lot of people to do that. We move it up earlier because a lot of people really need those calories when they can use them for fuel. So a lot of people need more fuel earlier in the day. That's another eating tip. We really are eating backwards. We should be eating our biggest meal in the early part of the day when we can burn those calories, and then start eating smaller meals as we lead towards the end of the day.
I understand the benefit of eating a little earlier in the day so we get those calories, we have that energy when we need it. Is there a benefit so like I stop eating at around 8 p.m. What would be the benefit on the tail end of the day if I stopped eating at like 4 p.m. or 5 p.m.?
I mean, I would actually need to see what you're eating to kind of break that down for you. But, just for most people, if you have, and I don't know how much you eat at the end of the day, but for most people, they tend to eat a bigger dinner than they need. So what I would probably encourage you to do is make sure that first meal of the day, and this is so important, and everybody pay attention. The first meal of the day should always contain fiber, fat, and protein. And I don't care what time that first meal is, but that first meal needs that trifecta of good health: fiber, fat, and protein. And so I encourage everybody, and breakfast is traditionally the sweetest meal of the day. People are having juice and cow's milk yogurt, and hello, lactose is just milk sugar. But so often dairy yogurts also have added sugars. So I just encourage people to reconstruct what that first meal looks like. Don't think of it, break fast. It's the first meal after the fast that occurs during sleep. Your first beverage should be water, so you better get up and have that water to help your body rehydrate and flush those toxins that are sitting in your lymphatic system. And then whenever your first meal is, just make sure that's like almost your biggest meal of the day, and that's where you're putting that valuable fuel into your body, right? You're getting that fiber, fat, and protein, and now you're fueled up. Your brain and your body are ready to go. And then make sure your dinner is a little bit lighter, so you're not asking your body to do a huge job digesting when you really need to be detoxing and restoring everything. Because the spinal fluid literally comes up and does like a power wash on the brain when we're asleep, and it removes all that metabolic gunk. And believe me, we're in front of screens all day. There's a lot of metabolic gunk going on up there. And we want to make sure that happens efficiently, because that's where we get the renewal. That's what helps us live younger, longer, and better. Where all the systems are functioning the way they're designed.
That makes sense. It makes a lot of sense. I know you're a fan of fermented foods. What are some of the advantages of adding fermented food to our diet?
Well, fermented foods have been a part of the human diet forever, because it was how we preserved foods. we would ferment them so we could keep them longer. And, with all this industrial and commercialized food production and preservatives for the most part are chemicals, we've gotten away from these fermented foods. So for naturally fermented, which is different than pickled. So pickled foods use vinegar and very often sugar. Lacto-fermented foods it's a natural fermentation process that uses water and salt. There's a recipe on my website if you want to try making your own fermented fruits and vegetables. And nice. When we eat those kinds of fermented foods, they are chock full of good bacteria. And because they're mostly plants that are fermented, we're getting all that beneficial fiber. So now we're getting prebiotics and probiotics in one, nutritious 2 or 3 bites. So I always buy, you can buy these fermented krauts and slaws. They're usually kind of by the yogurts. And I always have 2 or 3 in my fridge, and I put a scoop with every meal. And I just eat it like a condiment, and I love it. It's so yummy.
Yeah. I love that. I love what you're sharing. These are simple ideas. They're simple recipes that all of us can be trying. It doesn't have to be a difficult thing. So I appreciate that.
And I love kombucha too.
What is it with kombucha that you like? Somebody was just talking about kombucha this morning in a talk that I was in. What about kombucha do we need to know about?
So kombucha is a fermented tea beverage, and it's just delicious. I like the GT's Gingerade, and it's filled with probiotics and polyphenols and some B vitamins. And so during the week, when you kind of want something that feels like at 5 o'clock, that's when everybody wants that glass of wine. I have a glass of kombucha, and it's very satisfying. I drink it in a wine glass. And if I'm kind of out on the go and, I want something, instead of buying a plastic bottle of water, I might pick up a kombucha in a glass bottle and enjoy it, because now I'm getting more benefits. So for people who drink soda and they're looking for something carbonated, easing into kombucha can be a really great thing to do.
Yeah.
So I'm always trying to game it up.
Yes. I love that. Yeah, I like that idea of finding little hacks. If you, like the example you said, if somebody is constantly drinking soda, switch over to kombucha and you'll find so many benefits from it. So that's great.
And I have a hack for helping people get off of soda, because this is a big challenge for people, because soda is addictive. It is engineered to be addictive. So what I tell people is get some, it can be, maybe it's, club soda or Pellegrino, and start thinning the soda down. So maybe try, 50-50 to start. So you're drinking less sodas, but you're still getting some of that flavor, and just kind of wean yourself off it. And you'll get a huge benefit. Soda's really bad for us. So if you're drinking soda that's got sugar in it, those liquid sugars are it's like jet fuel. It's just, it just spikes your blood sugar, which wreaks havoc with our hormones. There's a lot of chemicals in sodas. Yep. And if you're doing diet soda, statistically, people who drink diet sodas gain weight. So diet sodas with artificial ingredients are really, really bad for us, and they ruin our gut health.
That's something I think most people don't realize that drink soda. They think diet soda is better than the regular, but they don't realize all the chemicals and the artificial ingredients that go into it that are destroying, like you said, destroy our gut and are so bad for our health. So I appreciate you bringing awareness to that subject. That's a great tip. I'm going to recommend that too, because I do have some friends and family members that love soda, and I try to tell them this is not good. This is not good for your health. This is so bad. And they struggle because, like you said, it's addictive. And That's a really good tip, I think, for them to kind of wean off the soda and into a healthier lifestyle.
Yeah, because it's hard to tell people you've got to give this up for like ever,
Right.
that's really
Right.
hard. So I try to tell people, well, yeah, you shouldn't do this, but here's what you could do. These are like doable tips. So let's just add in some things. So instead of getting rid of going cold turkey on your soda, let's just see how it feels to, dial it back a bit. And,
Yep.
the reason we want to be so careful with our gut and make sure we're putting the right things in it is because whatever bacteria we're feeding is going to send messages to the brain. So the gut sends thousands and thousands of messages to the brain every single day. The brain only sends a couple of hundred to the gut. So the gut is calling the shots. When we eat those whole foods that, have the fiber is what good bacteria eats. So we need that plant fiber to feed the good bacteria. That's why I'm saying if you can just add in that ground raw flaxseed before meals every day, that's such a great start. That will really help everybody. No downside to it. It'll help you lose weight. It'll help you eat more appropriately. It's all good.
Yeah.
But when you put artificial ingredients, and we can't help it, we are being marketed to 24/7. We are being educated by people trying to sell us stuff. So when we put in liquid sugars, when we put in artificial ingredients, we're feeding the bad bacteria. And the bad bacteria is telling our brain to eat more of that food. And that is part of that low-level inflammation, that the gut is the heart of our immune response. We are now weakening our immune response, creating low-level inflammation, and we know where that goes. We've already talked about that. So we want to feed the good bacteria.
I love that explanation because it explains it so simply that, for a lot of people that have, whether they're addicted to soda or unhealthy food, they're not understanding what they're really doing and the science of what's happening inside our body, inside our gut, and inside our mind. So I think that's a simple way of explaining it that for lay people, they can just understand that a little bit easier. So cool.
And a lot of people don't feel great. They don't remember what it feels like to feel amazing.
True. Yeah. So true.
So if you have these habits, remember that there's no neutral habits. They're either helping you or hurting you. So if you have habits that are hurting you and slowly undermining your health, and you get used to not feeling great all the time, you need more coffee to get through the day. You want more alcohol because it makes you kind of feel better. You crave more of those foods that are engineered to be addictively delicious, and it becomes very hard to break that cycle for most people. So we talked about this before. If we eat the way our great-grandparents ate when they were kids, that's a really simple way of thinking about what we eat. So when we're at the grocery store and we're looking at something and we're like, was this around when my great-grandparents were kids? If it wasn't, maybe don't buy it, and maybe look for something that would have been around. And our great-grandparents, when they were kids, people didn't waste things. Meat was expensive, sugar was expensive, and we didn't have as many. There were probably still some, but there weren't these amount of chemicals in the food we're eating. And we didn't even talk about our home environment and the personal care chemicals and the cleaning chemicals. I mean, that's a whole nother topic. So if it wasn't around when your great-grandparents were kids, just don't buy it. And just, come to the Culinary Cure. I have a gift for anybody listening to this. I have Healthy Habits 101. It's like a freebie download. It's got recipes. It's got like a lot of the stuff we talked about today. And, you can download it and just read through it. It's like 20 pages. It's got some really good recipes. And, that's just a really good starting point for people who want to do better and they feel overwhelmed because we've talked about all this stuff and they're like, oh my God, I drink juice in the morning, and I don't get up at 4:10 like Kristen does, So.
Yep. No, that's super helpful. Before I get to my last question, Kristen, you've mentioned your website, culinarycure.com. Where else can people find more about you, and where can they find your new book?
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much for asking and for having me on.
Of
I am
course.
on Instagram at Kristen Coffield, and I post something of value every single day, some wellness information that people can use. I am on Clubhouse at Kristen Coffield, and I moderate about 6 rooms a week on wellness, in particular women's wellness. And my book, How Healthy People Eat, is on Amazon. And if you go to the Culinary Cure, there's a link to take you there. And I've created a lot of value because I really want to help people do better and understand where they personally can take back control of their lives, starting on the end of their fork.
Wow. I love that. That's great. I didn't realize I'm in Clubhouse myself quite a bit. Maybe I've seen you in different rooms. I probably have without realizing it. So I'm going to have to pay attention to that moving forward.
Well,
Cool.
I have a Culinary Cure Clubhouse. I haven't done a whole lot with it yet, but yeah, I'm in a lot of rooms each week, and every single morning on Clubhouse at
Mm-hmm.
6:55, I host a powerful morning motivation 15-minute room. And I
Cool.
help people create a morning routine because there's 4 things that you can do each morning to kind of power up for the day. One is rehydrating with that lemon water.
Yep.
Another is writing down an intention or a word or 3 things, let's say, that if they happen today would be great. We do
Mm.
pranayama breathing, which is single nostril breathing, and we do a little bit of gentle movement. And it's 15 minutes. It's like a gift you give yourself.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I love that. Those 4 are so powerful. I try to incorporate those into my morning routine as well. But that's great to have that resource on Clubhouse, all in one kind of packaged little time frame. So cool. Well, Kristen, my last question for you is around what health means to you, your definition of health. So what does health mean to you?
Well, isn't it just everything? If we don't have our health, we spend all of our
Yep.
time and money trying to get it back. So
Mm.
almost all of us come into the world with good health. It's the greatest gift we're ever given. And it's really up to us to take good care of this so that we can build that resilient wellness and go
Mm.
forth and be productive humans, and do all the things that are important to us, and also at the same time doing things that are good for the planet and good for the community and supporting
Mm.
other people who are trying to make good choices each day. So I feel like health is everything, and I don't for 1 minute take for granted my good health.
Mm. It's so true. It's so true. It goes back to what we were talking about earlier. If you find yourself in life where you're struggling with a career or finances or your relationships, or you're just down in the dumps for X, Y, or Z reason, um, it's really important to go back to your health and start making those changes. Because once you get that in order, then you can open yourself up to new possibilities. So I love
Absolutely.
love that answer.
I love
Awesome.
that. And I love what you're doing here. And thank you so
Thank you.
much for having me
Of
and for
course.
sharing a little bit about yourself as well. So
Yeah.
maybe we can, if you want to come back and talk about detoxing the home or the kitchen intervention, I'm your girl.
Yeah, I would love that. I think there's a lot that we can cover there. So I would love a second follow-up conversation. And I do want to say I appreciate your approach to a lot of things that we've talked about today. I find, folks that listen to my podcast or people that are interested in health in general, they get frustrated. A lot of what we were talking about earlier is like there's so much information, there's so much advice that's thrown out there. And then people are like, well, where do I even start? So I appreciate your approach of taking those small steps, simple steps, and then it can become habit. It doesn't have to all happen overnight. So, and your explanations too. I find that you are sharing ideas and material in a way that people can understand. I find, in the health industry, we often complicate things. We like to throw a lot of science out there, and that's great. We need to back up what we're saying with science, but sometimes it gets too sciencey, it gets too complicated, and then the everyday person is like, "What does that even mean? Can you explain it to me like I'm 5?" So I appreciate your patience and your approach there.
Thank you so much. And we all have to eat, right? And so we might as well use that one thing that we do every day to our advantage. And I promise everybody, if you just start drinking more water today, you can do that, right? Yeah. So kind of make it 8 to 10 ounces an hour for 8 to 10 hours a day. Just start there. And we should talk about a kitchen intervention, because creating the right conditions of life is a big part of this equation. And
100%.
Taking the knowledge from up here where people are overwhelmed by it and putting it in their kitchens, so that it becomes a doable thing. That's where the magic begins.
Yes. So good. Well, Kristen, I really appreciate you. I appreciate you coming on to the podcast and sharing your story and all of your expertise. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Have a great day.